started to write a book about the Beatles and spiritual journey and the message of the Beatles. It's tentatively titled "All You Need Is Love." I know that's probably been used, a dozen times already. There are books with those titles, with that title. But anyway, it's fitting for what I'm going to be talking about because I look at the Beatles as the band of love. I think John Lennon was the ringleader, and he really played up this idea. It's well known that the Beatles had however many songs, like 215 recorded songs during their stint, during their 8 years, or however, I think it was 8 years, right? And over half of those songs mention love in the songs, right? Now that's, for pop music, that's doesn't seem to be that incredible, but they did seem to use the word love a lot. They also explored love not just as a relationship between two people, not just like the teeny bopper music that they started with, like I want to hold your hand, or she loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. But they increasingly got a little bit, the songs got more deep in terms of talking about love, especially John Lennon's. And so I wanted to talk about John Lennon. And one quote from Lennon that I thought was interesting is he said something like, I was a thinker before I started playing music, and I'm still I'm still a thinker first and a musician second, which I think is a very telling thing to say. And it's well known that Lennon's songs probably were not only the most innovative and inventive of the Beatles, but also probably the more profound, like starting with The Word from Rubber Soul. Then you have Revolver, you have Tomorrow Never Knows, and on, right? Even All You Need Is Love is a very profound song. I'm gonna go over that song at some point. But so what I want to talk about today is in 1970, after the Beatles broke up, John Lennon, he released his song God, and in that song, let's see if I have it. See if I can pull it up real quickly here. The lyrics, right? It's well known. God is a concept by which we measure our pain. And in the song, he says, I don't believe in Jesus. I don't believe in Krishna. I don't believe in the Beatles. Right? So I don't believe in magic. I don't believe in I Ching. I don't believe in Bible. I don't believe in tarot. I don't believe in Hitler. I don't believe in Jesus. I don't believe in Kennedy. I don't believe in Buddha. I don't believe in mantra. I don't believe in Gita. I don't believe in yoga. I don't believe in kings. I don't believe in Elvis. I don't believe in Zimmerman. That's Bob Dylan. I don't believe in the Beatles. It's funny that it didn't say I don't believe in Beatles. He said I don't believe in the Beatles. Just believe in me, Yoko and me, and that's reality. The dream is over. What can I say? The dream is over yesterday. I was the dream weaver. He's acknowledging, I think, that he was really, I said the ringleader, also the dream weaver. He was the dream weaver of the band. He was really the guy that really kind of led the band, right? And then apparently Paul McCartney did later in the last few years of the band's being together. But now I'm reborn. I was the walrus, but now I'm John. And so, dear friends, you'll have to carry on. The dream is over. Dream is over. Dream of the Beatles, the dream of the 60s. Maybe, I don't think John Lennon ever gave up on peace and love, right? But I think there was an acknowledgement after the 60s were over that the world has not changed in any major way as we thought it was going to change. That's a whole nother subject I want to get into. That's like the apocalyptic understanding of young people, especially before you get to the age of 30. And the Beatles did not hit 30. I think John Lennon was 30, maybe he was 29 when the Beatles broke up. There was a saying in the 60s, don't trust anyone over 30. And the Beatles were not 30 yet. But after they hit 30, then they all went their separate ways. They all did their solo albums, which were all successful, including Ringo. And Ringo had that song, It Don't Come Easy, which was a hit. Now, I heard a funny story, which is that Ringo, actually, while the Beatles were together, Ringo worked really hard on the song. He was really like agonizing over the song. And then he showed it to the other Beatles, and they were like, that's a Bob Dylan song. Now, I just want to mention that what I wanted to get into in this video is as John and his relationship to Christianity and Jesus. I just want to start to broach the subject. It's a big subject. He grew up in the Anglican Church. I think all the Beatles were spiritual but not religious. With all the talk of love in their songs, they didn't have any talk of God. They didn't really talk about Jesus. They didn't bring religion very much into the music. But they definitely brought in love over and over again. They brought in the sun, right? There's many mentions in Beatles songs of the sun, and Paul had the song I'll Follow the Sun, Good Day Sunshine. The word talks about it's like sunshine. Love is like sunshine. Now, in 1972, apparently, this is a claim. This is a claim that I want you to tell me what you think. I'm going to read you this letter that apparently John Lennon wrote to Oral Roberts, who was a televangelist, famous televangelist at the time. And in it, Lennon is basically pleading with him for help. His life is a mess. He needs. Now, remember that he wrote the song God. I don't believe in Bible. I don't believe in Jesus. He also said, I don't believe in Krishna. I don't believe in Buddha. Right? But maybe he had a little bit of a turnaround a couple years later. Now, it's pretty much established that he did have a born-again experience in 1977. I think apparently he was a TV addict, and he was watching Pat Robertson, I believe, on television, and he kind of had a born-again experience. Similar, I think, to Bob Dylan. A year later, Bob Dylan, 1978, had someone threw a crucifix on stage, or gave him a crucifix in concert. The next night he put it on, and he was in his hotel room, and he had this experience of Jesus. He felt the presence of Jesus in the room, and he became born again after that. And then he recorded, I think, 2 or 3 albums that were kind of like born again Christian music. Still rock music though, but kind of rock gospel music. Now, let's read this letter, and I'm going to read the asides. When Oral Roberts actually read the letter to his congregation, he had I think millions of followers. This guy, Oral Roberts. Okay, so this is like from 1972. So this is what John Lennon wrote, and then I'm going to tell you when Oral Roberts gives his asides, right? So Rev Roberts, this is ex-Beatle John Lennon. And then Oral Roberts said to his congregation, and it's a little hard for me to read, so I had it typed. I don't mean that it in a bad way. Don't misunderstand me. I just don't always get every word, as people don't always get every word I write by hand too. Are you ready? This is quite a letter. Rev Roberts, this is ex-Beatle John Lennon. I've been wanting to write to you, but I guess I didn't really want to face reality. I never do this. This is why I take drugs. Reality frightens me and paranoids me. Paranoids me is not a really... Paranoids is not a word. John Lennon was a smart guy. I don't, you tell me. True, I have a lot of money, being a Beatle, been all around the world, but basically I'm afraid to face the problems of life. Let me begin to say I regret that I said the Beatles were more popular than Jesus. I don't even like myself anymore. Guilt. My cousin, Marilyn McCabe, has tried to help me. She told me you were praying for me. I don't think it's been established that John has a cousin or had a cousin named Marilyn McCabe. Here's my life. And then Oral Roberts gave this aside. He said in his letter, he said it like so many do over there. Here's me life. He wrote, here's me life. Now, John Lennon wrote the song In My Life. He didn't write In Me Life. Do you think he would write in his letter me instead of my? It's kind of funny, unless he was on drugs. Maybe he was on drugs when he wrote this letter to him. But this is why I think this letter is a forgery. Here's me life. Born in Liverpool. My mom died when I was little. His mom died when he was 18, not when he was little. My father left me at 3. It was rough because just my aunt raised me. I never really liked her. I had an unhappy childhood, depressed a lot, always missing my mom. Maybe if I had had a father like you, I would have been a better person. My own father I hate with a passion because he left my mom and me, came to me after we found a hard day's night and asked for some money. It made me so mad. Paul had to hold me down. I was going to kill him. I was under the influence of pills at that time. Married Cynthia, had a son, John. Now his son was not named John. He was named Julian, unless maybe he originally called him John. I don't know. But he says he has a son named John. That's not true. His son was named Julian, and his son was probably like 6 or 7 years old by the time. You would think he would call his son by the correct name. I had to marry her. I really never loved her. She always embarrassed me walking around pregnant, not married, so I married her. Only one regret. John has had to suffer a lot because recently she's been married again. He and me never get to see each other because she refuses because I'm married to Yoko. Aside, this is Oral Roberts again, I hope I'm pronouncing the name right, Yoko. So life as a Beatle hasn't been all that great. I came out and told them I wanted a divorce because Paul and me never got along anymore, and that's how the 4 ended. Since 1967, I've had a police record for dope and forging 12 checks to America. My wife, Yoko, and I have searched all over for her daughter we can find. Her ex-husband took her away. Yoko is going crazy. As the song we wrote is that we wrote, Paul and me, money can't buy me love. It's true. The point is this, I want happiness. I don't want to keep up with drugs. Paul told me once, quote, you made fun of me for not taking drugs, but you will regret it in the end, unquote. And then aside, this is Oral Roberts, he doesn't mean me personally. It's funny that he said that. Explain to me what Christianity could do for me. Is it phony? Can he love me? Meaning, I guess, God or Jesus, I want out of hell. P.S. This address, staying at the cousin's house, Rev Roberts. Also, I did watch your show until Channel 6 took it off the air. Please try to get it back on. A lot of people I know loved your show. I especially like the world action singers. Your son Richard is a real good singer. George told me he met you and them when he was at the studio. And then Oral Roberts says, this was George Harrison, isn't it? I didn't get to meet George, but the singers did at NBC. Sincerely, John. P.S. I hate to say, under the influence of pills now. I can't stop. I only wish I could thank you for caring. After reading the letter Oral Roberts said, this handwritten letter of his was 3 pages and I wrote him 4 or 5 back. Would you like to hear a little of what I'm saying to him? The second time I'm writing to him again because the urge just wouldn't leave me. Roberts went on to read the students a letter he had addressed to both John and Yoko. He said there may have been, quote, some truth, unquote, in Lennon's infamous more popular than Jesus statement at the time, but that Jesus is the only reality. He then asked John to keep writing him and express his hope that God will save his soul. I never dreamed that someone like John Lennon would have been watching the television program, Roberts said later in the chapel sermon. Is that the way you feel? It never would have entered your mind, and we never know what we're doing for the Lord. Lennon's letter received a tremendous amount of fanfare, both at the time of the reading and since then. It's been mentioned in several books, numerous blog posts, a Christianity Today article, and was even referenced in Robert's obituary in the New York Times. However, every reference to the letter cites the incomplete version in the Harold Jr. biography, and all these references may actually be wrong. Why? We have looked for the original for years, but it is nowhere to be found, explains Roger Ryden, curator of the Oral Roberts University Archive. We have done a good job over the years of keeping up with this kind of item, but this one got away. We had a researcher here in 1985. It was lost then, and has not been found since. Without the original letter, it's impossible to verify whether it was actually Lennon who wrote it. When Roberts read the letter at the chapel, he was reading a typed version of the letter, and when he read it out loud, he frequently interrupted the letter and altered the words. The more accurate record of the letter is Roberts' audio-taped sermon, but representatives from ORU are oddly skittish about allowing access to the audio tape. Their public relations director ignored repeated requests for permission to hear the tape. On November 14th, 1980, less than a month from his murder, Lennon recorded a song he had written to Yoko called You Saved My Soul. It exists only as a rough demo of the very last recording he ever sang on, passed around as a bootleg recording. The lyrics read, "When I was lonely and scared, I nearly fell for a TV preacher in a hotel room in Tokyo. Remember the time I went to jump right out of the apartment window on the west side of town of old New York. You saved me from that suicide, and I want to thank you for saving my soul with your true love." He wrote that to Yoko, right? He wasn't talking about Jesus. I'm pretty sure this letter was forged, right? This is not John Lennon writing this to Oral Roberts. This is probably something that, my guess is either Oral Roberts and his team dreamed up this letter that they claim was from Lennon, or someone just forged it and sent it in claiming it was from John Lennon. Too many mistakes in the letter, and too many kind of like, oh, come on, John didn't write this. It's possible, anything's possible, but the fact that he doesn't know his own son's name, the fact that he says me, he writes me life, here's me life. That's funny. Also, I think it's been noted that it does, besides the me life, it doesn't sound British. It doesn't sound like British English. It sounds more like American English. It's probably someone in America that wrote this, like a native-born American English speaker. It also, I think people looked at it's weird also that the original letter was lost. I think that's a clue, right? The original letter is nowhere. You would think that if he really got this letter and Oral Roberts thought enough to actually read it to his whole congregation, he would have framed the letter and kept it in a very safe place, and not have lost it. And the fact that they don't even let people listen to the audio tape is very weird. So I this is one of those things where it's kind of I think it's like the culture wars, right? It's like organized Christianity getting back at John Lennon, basically is what it sounds like, and trying to be bigger than the Beatles again, right? John Lennon had that quote, "I don't know what's going to go first, Christianity or rock music, rock and roll." I think the Beatles are still going to be around for a long time. I checked on Spotify, if that's any indication, and they have 32 or so million monthly listeners, which is a lot. You would think it would be more, but Drake has something like 75 million, but he's contemporary, right? Will Drake's music be around in 50 years? Will it be as big as the Beatles? I don't know. We'll see. Only time will tell. Obviously, the people of this generation that are really into Drake will be, will be older, and they'll still remember him, right? So we'll see after all the Beatles die, let's say 20 years from now, we'll see how big the Beatles are, right? Will the Beatles still be a big deal? Will their music still be listened to? Yeah. Anyway, of course, the Beatles have been likened to like Mozart and Beethoven, and we still listen to Mozart, Beethoven, and Bach, right? We still listen to the great composers. Even also of the 20th century, the music that is pretty timeless is still being listened to even after the artists like Frank Sinatra, Gershwin. You can name all the great composers of the 20th century, the popular music composers. They're still being listened to, but not as much. But the music is not lost. So anyway, I think fair to it's pretty safe to say that John Lennon probably did not write this letter. He probably did struggle with Christianity and with Jesus probably his whole life. I'm sure he did on some level or another. But I doubt that he wrote this letter, and I'd love to hear your comments and your thoughts. So feel free to let me know your thoughts. Okay, thanks so much. What should we say? All you need is love.